Welcome to Amunah, True Faith, or Faith Based on Truth. Today, let's talk about apostasy. The following is a definition derived by using comparative synonyms: error, misbelief, fallacy, deviance, falsehood, infidelity, misconception, defection. All those words describe what apostasy is. And that is by the thesaurus out of Merriam Webster, okay? Scripture defines apostasy as falling away from the truth of the one faith in the scriptures, first given to Moses at Mount Sinai and expanded and established by the same sovereign one who gave it to us through emissaries and prophets later on. And we'll find that in Ephesians 4:5 and 2:20. In the same way as precise instructions help us to construct whatever those instructions are meant to create, Scripture sets forth a single faith meant to bring forth that which Yahuwah, Elohim, has determined to be the destiny of humanity. His word, as his instructions are known, is known in Scripture as Torah in Paleo Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, and Torah in Masoretic or modern Hebrew. Torah is defined as instructions, direction, and constants, or irrevocable law. Example of irrevocable law is the law of sin and death, which you'll find in Ezekiel 18:4. Just one illustration. The first apostates were our first progenitors. They had one constant they had to obey. That was it. To disobey it meant their death, and they were told so. As long as they lived according to that set of instructions, they were constantly and eternally bound to the fountain of life, the life giver, Yahuwah, the creator of heaven and earth. But they opted to believe a created being, the serpent, rather than the creator. And their death began the moment they were separated by their sin, by the transgression of the constant. Once they stepped over that line, they died. Now, they were separated from Yahuwah. They fell away from the directive given to them. Okay, that's how they stepped away into apostasy, is by believing the serpent. So that they might not suffer death, that's why the directive was given to them, to keep them alive. In doing so, they activated the negative side of the constant, the side meant to ensure that anything not connected to the source of life does not remain eternally, the cleanup side of that constant. Don't do this, or this will happen. So that was the negative, the consequence of that directive that was given. And since they chose not to obey it, then they suffered the consequences. This is where all those synonyms that define apostasy are witnessed to by their actions. If you will notice, they made an error in trusting the serpent. Their misbelief cost them to die. Their fallacy was in believing that the serpent had their best interest at heart. Their deviance from the commandment created a discrepancy in them that transferred them from life to death because they became a living anomaly within Yahuwah's perfect creation. The falsehood they put their trust in transferred the infidelity within the serpent, a spirit of murderous covetousness, to them through their own disobedience. They brought it, they called it into their own house. Their misconception cost them their lives, their paradise, and their relationship with their Creator. Their defection from the given instructions means they walked away from the truth because they believed the serpent presented them with something better. Their apostasy killed them. Take note that their apostasy did not kill their body instantly. It simply severed the spiritual ligatures that bound them to the source of life. That left a gaping spiritual holes from where the life force began to issue out. They began to lose their life force the moment they became disconnected from the source of life. We know not when Eve died. We don't know that. But we do know that it took 930 years for life to completely leave Adam. The life force left Adam, which last bit left him 930 years later. They lived to see the effects of their apostasy, of course, the loss of their beautiful and peaceful garden, where the presence of Yahuwah dwelt with them and where he walked and talked with them. Can you imagine having a relationship that strong? Uh, Having to now till the earth and wait for it to yield their food, which was different, which they now ate with calloused hands, aching from the work they had to perform just to live, must have evoked the deepest regrets. You know that? The murder of their younger son by their eldest, in a jealous rage over his offering having been rejected, while his younger brother's offering was accepted. That was just a matter of jealousy. That's all it was. And of course, the true nature showed up. It must have been an indescribable ordeal for them. Their disobedience came to fruition in the form of loss, hard labor, and family dysfunction. And I can imagine how they lamented what they lost. Now, Israel later on entered Egypt as 70 souls. They bore the name given to them or given to their elder Jacob, with whom the angel had wrestled, and to whom the same angel of Yahuwah had given the name Yasharal. Israel is derived from the Masoretic Hebrew. That's where we get Israel in English. But it's really, according to the Paleo Hebrew, it's Yasharal. And the meaning of it is he who rules is Alua, or Alua, he who is sovereign. He who rules as the sovereign one. And you tell me that Yahusha is not the sovereign one. And I'll tell you what, we'll just go to the scriptures and see what it says. Okay, see what the word of Yahuwah says. They came into an established culture that considered them uncultured and probably a backward people in their eyes, but accepted them into their nation because of Joseph and what Yahuwah had done through him to save Egypt from starvation during 7 years of drought. Here, Yasharal remained for 430 years. Now they weren't always slaves. They melded into the nation, into the culture. Okay, uh, some of them some of them remained true to the way of life they had, or they knew before coming into Egypt. They were a nation within a nation. Okay. Others adopted the Egyptian way of life. They became a multitude so numerous over the years, over the 430 years, that they became a perceived threat simply because of their numbers. The Egyptians began thinking they're going to take over. All right, we're going to become their servants. So because of it, they were persecuted, murdered while barely out of the womb, killing babies, and ultimately subjected to slavery. So deep were their roots in the Egyptian culture that without this time of affliction, they would never have opted to leave. They would have done this on their own. This had to come. But because of their suffering, they cried out to Yahuwah for deliverance. We have all read, heard, or watched a movie or TV series about their deliverance. So I will not attempt to retell the events here. That's not the purpose of this. Rather, let us move on to the time when this mixed multitude of people, some who were key personages in the furtherance of Yahuwah's plan for Yasharad, and others who simply followed along. There were also the detractors. Of course, there's always the detractors who questioned every decision made by Yahuwah's appointed leaders, opposed everything they did not agree with, and whined about every discomfort they had to suffer while sojourning in the desert. Of course, the followers most often sided with them. Oh, what are they whining about? Yeah, let's us whine too. All right. They entered into covenant with Yahuwah at Mount Sinai and profaned that covenant before 40 days had passed. He had made them he had given them the standing that we now have. And we'll get into that later on in another video. But they saw the works of Yahuwah's mighty hand and yet always focused on the negative because they had a slave mindset. Their apostasy became evident before and after their deliverance. They were already apostates before then, before he ever delivered them, because they had forgotten Yahuwah's ways to a great extent. Even the ones who lived the same way they lived when they came in, uh, to them, there was a lot that was not known. Now, it becomes more obvious in the aftermath of their deliverance, in that their eyes saw the works of his hands that should have cemented their faith in Yahuwah for the rest of their lives. Imagine seeing the Red Sea part. What would that do for you for the rest of your life? Can't ever forget what I saw and what his hand did. Okay. But immersion into the Egyptian culture for so long and their incredulous hearts, big point there, compounded to keep them in a stupor that would not let them see the majesty of their mighty one. They couldn't see past the little things or the things that would pass to see the greatness of what he had done just to deliver them out of Egypt. The plagues, all of these things, the protection, everything that he had done, and yet they just simply could not see beyond their noses. So even after having been delivered from slavery and experiencing the provision and constant protection afforded them, instead of gratitude, they developed an attitude of entitlement, ever demanding, accusing, and murmuring. But Yahuwah's plan was further established through those chosen by him to do so. He had his faithful ones among that crowd. All people chosen by Yahuwah to carry his work forth have had one thing in common. They have paid close attention to the instructions given to them by him. If you will read, you will see that in Noah is told is of Noah it is said that he followed Yahuwah's instructions. He did everything that Yahuwah had told him to do the way he told him to do it. And that's important. It is very important. It was because they did not listen to the words of his covenant so as to follow his instructions that apostasy led them to become who they were in the time or when the time of Messiah's visitation arrived. By that time, they had entered the promised land as a nation, been divided into two separate kingdoms, had one kingdom, Yasharal proper, exiled to Assyria, had the other kingdom, Yahuda, carried off into captivity for 70 years, and returned to the land with religious sects eventually taking the place of the covenant paradigm given to them while sojourning in the desert. What they brought back after Babylon was not the same thing as what they had before. Oh, they had a semblance of it and they had some of the elements, but it was not the same. From Babylon, they brought forth a different religion, and to this day, they practice it. Okay, those who are still in that paradigm, they still practice that. Their apostasy from the truth of his covenant created in them their inability to recognize Yahusha the Messiah. That's what happened. They didn't know him because he was a totally different paradigm. He was truth in essence, he was truth in person. And they didn't know anything about that. They were used to their religion. So, in the depth of their apostasy, they persecuted him, they hated him, they sought and eventually achieved his death. All right. They were so staunch in their twisted beliefs that his truth sounded like hatred. His words were plain and easy to understand, yet he spoke according to what was written in the books from Genesis to Malachi, but they refused his words because their understanding had been twisted by their sectarian religious indoctrination. Does that sound familiar? It's beginning to, huh? And while they were arguing with each other as to which of their doctrines was the truth and whether angels truly existed, the king of all the angels stood before them with the spirit of our creator powering. empowering his very existence. He had closed their eyes and ears that they might not see, nor hear his words, and understand and believe unto salvation. Yes. How do we know? See, in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8 through 11, it says, "Also I heard the voice of Yahuwah saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. And he said, Go and tell this people, Hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and return and be healed." Then said I, Master, how long? And he answered, Until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate. And people will try to they will try to say that was fulfilled in Jerusalem. No, there is a greater. Our faith is not a linear faith, it is a cyclical faith. For those who don't understand that, things happen that will happen again in greater portion or manner. And it's a theme for another time. It is a subject for another time. So it was that Messiah came, died, and rose again to be the mediator of a better covenant with better promises. That's the way it is written. He did not renew the provisionary covenant that placed his people under the law of that covenant, a covenant known as the Levitical covenant, in which men were mediators between Yahuwah and his people. No, Yahusha took the Ten Commandments and gave us his spirit to write them in our hearts as we live. That's how he writes them. As we live, if the spirit of Yahusha is in you, then he is writing those commandments. That's how you know, hey, I can't take this because it's not mine. I cannot, I cannot covet anything that does not belong to me. And you know, this is the reason why we honor the Shabbat, all his Shabbats, because Shabbat does not apply just to the seventh day. It applies also to the feasts. And once we know that, we understand why he says they are a sign between him and us. He gave us the Ten Commandments, gave us his spirit to write them in our hearts as we live. He did not place men over us to dictate what we shall believe. That is the apostasy of today. Today, you have people telling you what you can't, and you have people following. You have the same paradigm you had before in the desert. You had those who were just followers, who just walk around, with that deer in the headlights look, and they're not going to invest any time. That football game comes first. All right. All those other things come first. Making money comes first. I ain't got no time. I don't have any time whatsoever to get, and when I do, I get sleepy. Oh my goodness. Really? Give me a break. Anyway, while a foolish people await an antichrist to come, yet they live in ignorance of the word of Yahuwah, which reveals an antichrist that came and went some 1700 years ago, something that people do not understand. He came and sowed bad seed among the wheat in Yahusha's field. That's right. That's what that parable's about. It was he who was the prince of a people who would corrupt the faith of the set apart people. See, it's mistranslated because the translators used a corrupted form of Hebrew to translate the words of Daniel 9. And so there he's shown to be the prince of a people who would destroy the city. That's not what it's about. He came to corrupt the faith, not the holiness, not the. It's not about destroying a holy city. It is about corrupting the faith of a set apart people, and that's exactly what he did. It was through that one that the mystery of iniquity edified its strong delusion, while those who live in its midst are blind and deaf to the truth because they have surrendered their soul to a lie. That's the problem. That lie is a strong illusion that has been developed and established as the faith that represents the Creator and proclaims His word, supposedly. But it's sectarianism, divisiveness, incredulousness, hunger for money, thirst for vainglory, and its ever increasing desire to be more like the world, emulated in a religious environment, and to compete because it considers itself a business enterprise, reveals its true nature. Under the guise of winning souls, it builds bigger places of worship, attracts more members, works to gain greater recognition for those who promote it, and the idea that worldly gain is the reason for piety. This is the reason you want to be holy, because God will bless you and bring you great riches, and you will be. And if I am so blessed, yes. Okay. See what Matthew 13:22 says? He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. First Timothy 6:5 says, and nasty quarrels. Speaking of about this type of people, what happens? They have wicked minds and have missed out on the truth. These people think religion is supposed to make you rich. It's exactly what the scripture says. You think that this is all about having you have the best, that you're going to be the head and not the tail, means that you're going to have the best car. You're going to drive a Mercedes, you're going to drive a Lexus, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to go here and there, and you're going to have money to spend, and all the time you don't realize you're missing out on the truth because you think this is what faith is about. You're of all the poorest people, you're the poorest. There's poor people who have dirt floors who are richer than you are, if that's what you think. Matthew 6:19-21 says, stop storing up treasures for yourself on earth, where moths and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But keep on storing up treasure for yourselves in heaven. Where is that? What is that? It's the Word. The Word is the oil that you need, and the Word is the treasure that you need because it alone can save us. Where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Tell me that's not true. People's hearts are in their job. People's hearts are in their football, baseball, basketball teams. People's hearts are everywhere except in the Word. Oh, they pay lip service to it, yes, but that's not what it's about. You want to be saved? Remember what he said, if you would be my disciple, you cannot be saved without being a disciple. You want to be a disciple? He said, what? Deny yourself. Deny yourself. That's me first. Deny myself. Take up your cross, which is a symbol of death, and follow me. He said, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. At the end of this age, people are trapped in religious traps designed to keep them from seeing or hearing the truth and believing it unto salvation. The abomination of desolation sits in the holy place of many blind and unsuspecting but deceived people, trusting in the lies substituted by the strong delusion to render their faith useless. Let me tell you that the precepts that you have been given by that faith that started 1700 years ago, that took the place, that hid the truth away from you through its own precepts. It has developed and it has changed, it has morphed into what is today, but it's still the same old beast. Okay? And what's happened is many unsuspecting people are trusting in those lies that were substituted by the strong delusion, so that they could render your faith useless. Because if you go to enter into covenant with Yahuwah and you invoke a name that he has not given to you in his word, in his instructions, you ain't going no place. I'm telling you. This is why this is out now. This is why people understand that Yahusha is the name of our Messiah, and that Yahusha is the name of the Son who came in the name of his Father, and that that name is the only name given to man under heaven by which we must be saved, according to Acts 4:12. There is none other name. And so unless it matches what the law and the prophets said, it's not true. Any changes made to what was said then, because he said, "This is my name, Yahuwah. I am that I am is my name." And he says, "By this name shall you remember me for all your generations." So what are we doing? What are you doing invoking the name of some Greek entity who the word of Yah never said anything about? Look, examine yourselves to see if you are truly in the faith. So the strong delusion renders your faith useless, just as it did with the people at the time of Messiah's visitation. That's why they couldn't recognize. That's why they were completely clueless. It is doing with the majority of believers today the same thing, because they have hardened their hearts like Pharaoh, closed their ears to the truth like the majority of the Pharisees, and turned their ire on those who dare to believe the truth, just like Diotrephes. But a time of cleansing is just over the horizon. It comes with great fury to wipe the earth clean of its idolatries, injustices, murders, and all its iniquities. And nothing but the truth will keep those who turn to Yahuwah through the covenant in the blood of Yahusha, by whose name alone we must be saved. Woe unto those who trust in doctrines of escapism. I want to be raptured. Do not trust in those, because it is not true. It's a whole twisted paradigm that people who believe that live in. And when that fails you, you will be in a world of hurt. Okay? That don't trust in doctrines of escapism created by the strong delusion to deceive the foolish and superficial ones who trust in things and people. You don't trust in a pastor, you want to trust in somebody. Trust in the word of Yahuwah. He said, set them apart. Yahusha said, set them apart in the truth. Your word is the truth. There is no other truth. That is the truth. And so if it does not match the word of my Elohim, I will not believe it. In the midst of the greatest time of global affliction ever known to mankind, these shall have no protection from the destruction that is coming. Do you understand the urgency? Do you sense the urgency? That's why. It's not because I hate anybody or anything, or because anybody else that proclaims the name of Yahusha, the name of Yahuwah. It's not because we hate anybody, or are bitter or resentful or anything. It is because we know that this is the only name given to man under heaven by which we must be saved. We have understood how this is the truth of what Yahuwah has done and is doing and will do. But you must listen, because your soul is in peril, is in great danger. There's destruction coming. And when it comes, I pray that even then you have an opportunity to run into the strong tower. But because it is the end of this age, the end of the second day, and the demise of the kingdom of man, the fury amassed on the earth through all the iniquity practiced upon it will suddenly be released to return to those who trust in silver, gold, and lies. It will destroy the system created through competition that became wars that took an innumerable amount of innocent lives, because greedy men wanted what others had and deceived other men to fight and die for it through pride and vainglory. Oh, you're a hero. What was done on that battlefield stays on the battlefield. No, Yahuwah saw everything. The vile ones who practice and teach immorality and sexual deviance while revealing or reveling in the wealth that they amass shall meet their recompense. That's coming. It's coming. It has not been forgotten. None of these shall enter into the third day. And the majority of you will have no idea what I'm talking about when I say the third day, because who many do not study the words of the prophets. Now is the time to understand the truth of this one and only faith given to us by our Creator for our redemption and preservation by His mighty hand. If you let apostasy dissuade you from learning the truth, there is no telling what horrors you may have to experience, because it's the only mission that truth has is to set us free that we might run into the arms of our loving Father and be saved. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you the truth so that you can start to dig for yourself, to see for yourself, to open your eyes, to start to take into consideration whether maybe you should invest a little more time or maybe a lot more time into the word of Yahuwah. In rejecting the truth, we can only condemn ourselves because we have rejected the only salvation available to us. May your eyes be opened and your ears be made to hear and your heart receive it, and may you be healed. John 3:18 says, "He that believes on him is not condemned, but he that believes not is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of Yahuwah."